Our first important event for the Cold War is the space race. This was the competition between the United States and the Soviet Union to achieve superior spaceflight capability. The significance of the space race was that it was a scientific rivalry between the U.S. and Soviet Union over the exploration of space. Make sure you're writing the significance using key terms or drawing a picture of the space race in the far right-hand side of your vocabulary chart. Our next important event is the Cuban Missile Crisis. This was the 13-day confrontation between the Soviet Union and Cuba on one side and the United States on the other in October 1962. It was one of the major confrontations of the Cold War, and it is generally regarded as the moment in which the Cold War came the closest to turning into a nuclear conflict. The significance of this event was it was a Cold War event where the U.S. and Soviet Union were the closest to nuclear war. Make sure you're writing the significance, drawing a picture, or using key terms in the far right-hand side of your vocabulary chart. Our next important event is the Vietnam War. This was the Cold War era military conflict that occurred in Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia from November 1st, 1955 until the fall of Saigon on April 30th, 1975. This war was fought between North Vietnam, supported by its communist allies, and the government of South Vietnam, which was supported by the United States and other anti-communist countries. The significance of this conflict was that it was a conflict between the communist North Vietnam and the anti-communist South Vietnam. It was also a very unpopular war that resulted in many protests. Make sure you're using key terms, writing down the significance, or drawing a picture of the Vietnam War in the far right-hand side of your vocabulary chart. Our next important event is the Korean War. The Korean War was a war between North and South Korea in which a United Nations force led by the United States of America fought for the South, and China fought for the North, which was also assisted by the Soviet Union. This conflict took place between 1950 and 1953. The significance of the Korean War was that it was a conflict between the communist North Korea and the anti-communist South Korea. Make sure you're writing the significance using key terms or drawing a picture of the Korean War in the far right-hand side of your vocabulary chart. Our last important event for this unit is the Berlin Blockade. This was one of the first major international crises of the Cold War that resulted in casualties. During the occupation of post-World War II Germany, the Soviet Union blocked the Western Allies' access to the sectors of Berlin under their control. Their aim was to force the Western powers to allow the Soviet zone to start supplying Berlin with food and fuel, thereby giving the Soviets control over the entire city. The significance of the Berlin blockade was that it was an unsuccessful blockade attempt by the Soviet Union that resulted in the Berlin airlift. Make sure you're writing the significance using key terms or drawing a picture of the Berlin blockade in the right-hand side of your vocabulary chart.